Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and healing from narcissistic relationships. So, talk about this idea of being triggered, and I'd really like for us to think about a different way about this idea of being triggered. So, I know that there's a lot of, pushback and arguing of this term triggered, right? It feels like it's a bit overused. And even though it makes sense, and I think it obviously hits the point, and if it's your word, keep using it, I'm not going to stop you. I actually think it's a little too simple for what happens to survivors of narcissistic abuse. The term as it exists is meant to reflect the internal and sometimes external response a person may have to a situation, place, or person that is unsettling. It's a discomfort, a distress, sympathetic nervous system sort of bang that may feel disproportionate unless you've had a more traumatic or problematic experience with that situation, place, or person that would explain that ongoing sort of reactivity a person would have to that situation. A more apt metaphor to me, though, instead of saying triggered, is that a person feels plucked, like a guitar string. When you're made to encounter a situation that is evocative of your narcissistic situation, a place, or hearing yelling, gaslighting, having someone overwhelm you with words, you may feel as though you are sort of plucked and continue to vibrate like a guitar string would or a harp string would for a while. It's not as simple as, I just ran into a mutual friend of my narcissistically abusive ex and I felt funny and then I went about my day, and I felt triggered and I went about my day. Or I saw my ex and their new partner at a crowded store and got out before they could see me. That vibration right after you have one of those experiences, and it can be any kind of plucky experience, being gaslighted, late night texts coming into a new partner's phone, experiencing the silent treatment from someone, that string continues to vibrate. You don't just get over it. It reverberates for a while, and that doesn't feel good. It can leave you questioning yourself. When am I going to get over this? You actually may very well be over it. But these hurts, these really deeply nervous system held hurts, especially if they were repeated betrayals or behaviors that you encountered, they're not things that we release that easily. They're threats. They hurt us. So after the initial triggering experience, as it were, that pluck, that vibrating string may be around for a minute. It can leave lots of survivors wondering, am I ever going to get past this? Yes, you are. But like I said, this stuff really gets under our skin. And you can greet these moments with self-compassion. And when your strings get plucked, and sometimes you might feel they're just getting strummed, give yourself a minute to recover. Take a break, give yourself a breather, let the vibrating stop. Life after relational trauma and betrayal trauma can be very complicated. When people have what I'm going to call an episodic trauma, being attacked in a parking lot, experiencing a natural disaster, these traumas are extraordinarily painful. However, the triggers or the things that pluck our strings, they almost feel more apparent, right? A time of year, a location, a time of day. With relationship and betrayal trauma, it can get a lot more complicated because what may seem like ordinary experiences to others can be moments that are very unsettling. And because relational traumas aren't as clear-cut, there may even be judgment from the world at large when you kind of have this sort of sense of being plucked and this sort of reaction, a sort of, aren't you still making too big a deal of this? You aren't. These relational and betrayal hurts, they're held for a long time. They were very threatening to us at one time. But the string does keep vibrating for a while, so don't judge it. At those times, be nice to yourself. Recognize that just like that guitar string, that vibrating will stop, and you will quiet again. Perhaps over time, that pluck will be smaller, the string will be tighter, and the vibration will last a shorter time. Healing from these toxic relationships, though, it's a lifelong process. Sometimes just a word shift. Instead of the more simplistic, and I think sometimes even reactive, triggered, that instead of getting at a nuance of a reaction within you that keeps going on for a while, like a plucked guitar string, may be a more apt metaphor to capture this very, very common experience. Because I think that what does happen is for folks in these relationships, things that often are almost relegated to the sense of, well, this is what happens in relationships and trust is built over time. I get all of that. But for people who have experienced that absolutely confusing, turn you inside out experience of a narcissistic relationship, those little things, that dread in the stomach of, oh, here we go again, that's the pluck and the shake that stays with a person for a while. And since it doesn't always register for other people who may not have gone through something like that, survivors of narcissistic abuse often feel really silly and isolated and wonder, why does this keep happening and why does this reaction last for a while? Because it does. It's almost as though your body's going on high alert. You're being told, there's a threat around and this hurt you in the past. So you look up, you stand up a little straighter, you look around, and now it's different for you. You understand it, you've learned. It's not the same threat it was before, but it takes a minute for your body to read the memo. Thanks again.